Welcome to Writing Black Joy Season 1. I am Sophia Robinson, and I'm a writing coach, editor, story listener, and the producer of Writing Black Joy, a virtual space that celebrates and centers the voices of Black writers with joyful stories. Here, you'll find my conversations with some of my favorite Black writers and storytellers, learn more about their projects and the joy they are bringing into the world, and find inspiration for your own creative ventures, as well as tips for writing poetry, blogs, creative nonfiction, fiction, plays, and so much more from all types of writers, as well as a sneak peek into writing life. You could even find your next favorite writer, book, poem, play, or blog. And if you are a Black writer who is looking for a coach or an editor to help you bring your joyful story into the world, click on my website below and find out how you can work with me. In the meantime, let's go to today's guest. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Writing Black Joy. And today I am joined by one of my favorite people on this planet. It is the inimitable Ber-Henda Williams, who I love, love, love. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Ber-Henda. To those of you who may have wandered onto this page, just to let you know, this is Writing Black Joy, and this is a project that honors, that centers, and that features the voices and stories of Black authors with joyful stories. We have all sorts of writers joining us, playwrights, poets, children's authors, adult authors, non-fiction, everything, whole gamut. And I'm so excited to bring you this fantastic friend of mine today, Ber-Henda Williams. So Ber-Henda is a visionary and empath coach. She supports empathic, creative, visionary empaths to find their voice, embrace feminine power, and create mission-based businesses in service of social transformation, justice, and equity. So when she's not doing that, she runs a girls leadership program, the Power of Girlhood, for girls ages 8 to 18. I'm going to butcher this one. I'm going to try. Además, ella es una poeta bilingüe, which means that she is a bilingual poet. She believes feminine empaths are here to disrupt the patriarchy and oppression with their mission-based businesses. Before we start, can you say that in Spanish properly? Because I know I butchered it. Say it again.
No, you did great. Además, yo soy una poeta bilingüe.
Thank you so much. So as I said, she is a bilingual poet. She has one of those skills that I have always lifelong wanted to do, to speak another language. So I won't torture any of you out there by trying to conduct this conversation in Spanish. We are going in English. Welcome, Ber-Henda. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Yes. So happy to have you here. Folks,
happy to be here.
Ber-Henda and I are old friends. If we start talking and rambling off, just go with it. All right, just go with it. So I want to get started by asking you about your writing journey. As you said, you are a bilingual poet. And I want to know a little bit about this journey as a poet, as a writer, and what is it that you love about writing?
Oh my goodness. Well, what's my journey as a writer? What do I love about? So I think for me, poetry is deeper than an outlet. It's an expression. And so for me, it gave me a way to synthesize and process my own existence. And for many years, I would be so upset with myself because in the middle of crises, the only thing I can write about is love. Who does that? What are you writing about? The world is going to hell in a handbasket and you over here writing love poetry. And it occurred to me that perhaps, and I love that you're doing this, maybe joy is resistance.
Yes.
Maybe love is the biggest act of putting up or heading off opposition, right? Because the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Who better than a poet to write love poems about clearly a reality that is maybe alternate to the one that we see in a 3D dimension? And everything that we know, especially, folks who are spiritually inclined, things happen twice, first in consciousness and then in manifestation. Mm-hmm. So why not write love poems?
You know how much I love that. Simply, and as you said, that's part of the reason that I started this project, because I feel like you know, you have to find a way to bring love and bring joy into the chaos. There's nothing, I don't think bringing more chaos is going to achieve anything. So, you know, if the world is burning, bring some love. I think that's really, I love that approach so much. And I haven't asked you this yet, but I did ask you to share a poem with us, but I'm gonna possibly ask you to read it for us, because I think hearing it in your voice is gonna be so incredible. So I'm looking forward to that. And now I want to ask you the question of the sort of conversation, which is, why are joyful stories by Black authors so important to you?
Oh my goodness. I think it's important is an understatement. It's essential. I think that it is essential for anyone who inhabits a Black body to be joyful, because for centuries, I don't know that we even knew what that was or had the right to be joyful. When I think about it from the diasporic standpoint, we were ripped from our homes, right? Our cultural practices, spiritual practices, language, not only was demonized, but could mean death if we practice anything indigenous to us. So in 2021, our joy is not just our joy alone. It's our ancestors' joy.
Yeah.
It's the joy of the future to come. It's the joy in the face of oppression. It's the immutable, non-transferable, unmitigated bliss that no one can take from us. I will be joyful. And it's a birthright and a declaration and something that we have to hold. So for you to create this platform in this space for Black joy, I pray that those who stumble upon this and see it create joy for themselves, and for those who consider themselves allies or intercessors, do what you can to create a world where Black joy is the norm.
The norm, and very accessible. And I love that so much. You know, for me, I think that, you know, as I would have said numerous times to anybody who's anywhere on this page, that every story has to be told, right? The difficult stories, the hard stories, the stories of those oppressions, they have to be told. But first of all, I don't think enough of our stories are told. And I don't want them all to be about the difficult things either. Like, as you said, I feel like joy is a way of standing up. And I have a friend who said, you know, even when I was asking her to like review this page before I publicized it, and she was like, it was just a reminder to her that joy is something that she can want, and something that she can practice, and something that she can lean into. And it's just a reminder. So I love that you feel so it's so important, and that you're helping me to further this cause. So I'd love to know, and I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, what is a quote, and it could be from your work, it could be from someone you admire, and it could be about joy. What is a quote that you really love or live, you know, sort of like is important to you in life?
Wow, so glad you asked that question. So one of the anchors, because I think we all need to be anchored and rooted, because there can be so much to cause disruption to our joy and disruption just to our overall being. But I think that the quote that helps me to stay grounded and rooted in love is an Audre Lorde quote. And she said, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, or never destroy the master's house." And so when we think about tools of oppression, they're not love. Those tools do not provide hope. they, there's no passion in the toolbox. There's no freedom in the toolbox. So when we think about what holds up a system, then we have to look at whatever the antithesis is of the system and let that be our tool.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely. That is just so critical. And you know, it's like to me, I always think of it as a difference between fighting fire with fire and fighting fire with fire and fighting fire with water. Like, you want that antithesis to really be able to build something new, not just to dismantle the house, but to build something new. So I would love to know, what has your proudest moment been? It can be as a writer, but I know that your heart is in the Power of Girlhood, which I mentioned earlier, which is this leadership organization for young girls. And so I also want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about that. So you can talk about your proudest moment, either as a writer or in life or both. Anything's welcome here.
Wow. So I'll say, I'll do two. So in my writing life, my proudest moment, I was commissioned to write and perform a poem for Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is part of the squad. So for those around the world, she is a congresswoman from my city, Detroit, and is fighting the good fight, and definitely advocating for Palestine, so free Palestine. I just want to put that out there. And then also professionally or within the organization, I think our most recent Girl of the Year is an amazing young woman, student, scholar, athlete, and leader, Jordan Banks, giving her the this award for a young woman who unfortunately lost her life to gun violence. And yeah, so the article that you edited, yeah, so
yes, I remember,
so
yeah.
So Carlissa unfortunately lost her life to gun violence earlier this year, but we created an award post-mortem and awarded it to Jordan. But here's the irony, and I had no idea that they knew each other. So they actually played basketball on opposing teams, but they played basketball together. And Jordan had mentioned what a light Carlissa was and how influential and impactful. And it just made me think about, you know, how one life shifts and can make a difference, like one life. And so a young woman who hasn't even reached like the pinnacle of her life has impacted so many people in just the short time that she was here on this earth. And so in many ways, she satisfied her purpose. And then that just made me think like, okay, well, I've had a lifetime here in comparison. So what will I do with my life?
Yeah. And I think you're doing so much. I want to talk a little bit, just as this is a bit of an aside from the list of questions, but I want to talk a little bit about what the Power of Girlhood is doing. As BerHenda mentioned, I did edit an article for the magazine that they have that's coming out. I know they have a podcast and they have all kinds of things coming up. You know, tell us a bit about where the organization is now. I think is it 10 years old this year?
It is 10 years old.
Just turned 10 years old. Yeah, tell us a bit about the Power of Girlhood.
Yeah, so the Power of Girlhood is an organization that I founded 10 years ago. So with under the premise to support girls to amplify their voices. So for them to discover their natural gifts, skills, talents, and abilities, and how they use it, not just in career or, you know, in a vocation, but how they use those gifts and talents to create a shift or movements within their own communities, right? So if you see something wrong, like how do you have the audacity to one, say something, and then the courage to do something about it? And I just thought that, you know, as we look at the landscape, right, especially girls of color, you know, there's so many messages that are, I mean, just looking even at Simone Biles, right? She took a stand for her mental health. And has received significant backlash for it. And it's like, at what point do Black girls get to be human?
Yeah. And how much is enough? Like, I mean, Simone Biles is a world-class athlete. I'm sorry, right? I have a friend and he will also be a part of this project, my friend Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff,
but what more does she owe us, right?
But nothing. But that's what I'm saying. And Jeff said, Jeff was like, why are all these couch potatoes judging? I'm like, I am real sorry, right? But you know, she had, you know, I just know that there's so much pressure there. One of my patients and now a friend's daughter is an athlete who is a pentathlete, and she is out there, you know, probably going to be in the next Olympics. And this is a pressure, like this is a pressure cooker. Being a professional athlete is a pressure cooker. If anybody deserves to take a mental health day, I feel like, you know, don't judge them. At the very least, don't judge them. Know that they judge themselves more harshly than we can ever possibly judge them, and how much courage it takes to do that. And don't be so hard and so harsh on them. So I love that. I love that you started this organization too. I think that is something that so many of us, you talked about the young lady and the award and how much difference you can make in your life. And I think so many of us want to make a difference. And also, it is not easy, you know, pulling any, like for me, this is like a little 10-week project and I'm pulling this together. I'm just like, oh man, alive. And there are people out there pulling together bigger things than this. And so I really admire that you have not just pulled it together, but really been a source of inspiration for these girls for so long. I'm so looking forward to this magazine. I'm so looking forward to this podcast. The girls are, I mean, like, I was editing it. I saw one draft and I saw the next draft and I'm like, these girls are amazing, incredible writers. They're just phenomenal. I just love that they're so, they're just so incredible at such a young age. I know. So I can't wait to, you know, maybe when the magazine comes out, I'll get the chance to share some of it through this platform, but we'll see.
I would love, I would love for you to share the magazine through. Oh,
I would absolutely love to do that. That would be my absolute pleasure. So I really am pleased that I would have the opportunity to do that. So the next question is, what has been the hardest part of this journey so far? And again, it could be as a writer, or it could be anything, you know, where we're going into opening up the conversation.
Yeah, so I think the hardest part, as maybe as an artist in general, is the inner critic, managing your inner critic. You know, writing is competitive. If you want to, you know, especially derive an income for it, you have to subject yourself to scrutiny. And in particular, you know, when you're writing poetry, a lot of poetry, again, submissions, anthologies, you know, in spoken word, there's even, you know, the slam element. So all of it's, you know, when it comes to the monetization piece, it's very competitive. And not only competitive, you know, we're dealing with an art form that I feel like is undervalued and not totally appreciated.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, I still agree with that. Poetry is, I think, this is gonna sound terrible, but I think people think it's easy. I think people think like, oh, it's just poetry. Like it, as you say, it's really undervalued, really underappreciated. Good poetry is not appreciated or valued for sure.
No. So there's all of that inner work to contend with, is that, you know, does anyone care about my work? Does my work have any value? You know, does the genre have any value? And, you know, how do I support myself, you know, doing the thing that I know that I've been born to do, right? So it's like, it's almost like it can feel seemingly unfair and cruel that here's this thing that I do, the one thing that I know that I'm really good at, and I can't derive, or it's difficult to derive an income, you know, from the thing that I love most, that I know that I've been put on the earth to do. So I would say just navigating that space of giving yourself grace.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And not overly taxing yourself for, you know, the work and however it's perceived. You know, the poetry, it's for you. That's your gift. And it's not just your gift, it's your healing. It's your, you know, transmission. It's for you. And if it lands with someone else, that's fantastic. But initially that poem is just for you.
I totally agree. I know that you published your book. How long ago was that? Was that 2018?
2009.
2009? It was that long. I thought it was more recent than that. Wow. Okay. Did you self-publish? I can't remember.
I did.
Yes. Tell us a bit about that process. I have quite a few friends who are poets who are looking at working on anthologies, bringing together anthologies, and self-publishing. And I'd love to know a bit about the process in terms of like, how did you select the work? Was it in themes? Did you have it edited? Because this is something that a lot of poets ask me about, because I don't edit poetry, but I will edit nonfiction and some fiction. And poets ask me, like, they're afraid that an editor would remove, poetry is a very, to me, it's almost more of an art form than other forms of writing. And it's very much a personal message that's coming from you. And if somebody's editing it, right, even things like punctuation and stuff like that, I feel like may not, the normal rules might not apply. So I'd love to know a bit more about your process there in terms of how you even brought that book into the world.
Wow. So, I mean, it grew me up in so many ways. I mean, I had to learn about the business of poetry, as well as like the actual mechanics of like getting the book done. Yes, I had to edit it. I definitely there's still like even like typos and like errors in there. So I don't think that everything was captured. So what I would say is that, hindsight is always 20/20. I would have taken more time with it. I think that there was a rush and an urgency to just get it out. And I think that there's that game, right? Or that place that we play where it's like done is better than perfect. And so it's like, you really have to be inquisitive about where that line is, because it can easily turn into something where you don't get the work out because you're waiting for this elusive perfection. But I put it out, and I will say that the only regret that I have is that I would have taken it much more slowly. I would have, I had a publisher, but they just bound the book. Like they put the book together, they bound the book, and they put an ISBN number on it.
Right.
So I don't know that that's true publishing. And I had to learn, like, what's the difference between like layout and graphics?
Look, I tell you that you need, listen, publishing a book, right? The amount of skills that you have to develop in a short space of time, especially for self-publishing. And it sounds to me as if the publisher you had was either a hybrid publisher or something where, as you said, all they did is they weren't doing anything. I know somebody else recently who published, and she was like, they were supposed to market and they were supposed to do this, that, and they did none of those things. And so you have to ensure if you're really collaborating with somebody that it's, a trusted company and all those things. But you also have to remember a lot of that responsibility is still going to be yours as the author, because
nobody's going to love it like you. No one's going to love it like you. No one's going to get behind it like you. And then again, with the genre like poetry, again, it's the perceived value. But I would say that if it's put on your heart, on the inside of you to do something, do it. Because I mean, for a poetry book, it did sell fairly well. I got it on a shelf in my city. So it's
nice.
Yes. So my book is in a library. And I think that that's huge. That's a huge accomplishment. So, I definitely said, like, it grew me up a lot, and my eyes are like now more wide open. And so I am looking, to do another book. And with this one, going a little more traditional or more hybrid. So I'm leaning toward, do I need to do it? Either a lot of colleges and universities have presses. So do I want to go that route where it's under the support and guise of actually my alma mater, and see if they would be willing to publish it, or go to a smaller publishing house, but specifically a publishing house for women of color.
Yeah, Oh, definitely, definitely. Well, you know, I want my publishing house, but I think you might get to your book before I get to my publishing house. So
Well, we'll see.
we'll see. It'll be a race to the finish. If I get
Yeah.
there, I would have you on board in a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens next.
Mhm.
Tell me, I know that you may not, again, we just having a conversation here. How did you manage
Mhm.
to get the book onto the shelves and into the libraries? Like, I'm curious about that because that is an amazing achievement.
Yeah. So everything starts with relationships. So I had
Mm.
hosted a poetry series. I want to say either 3 to 5 years before the book even came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I already had an existing relationship in the literary community. I had a
Wow.
relationship with the library.
Mm.
I don't know that it didn't necessarily get into stores, but it did get onto Amazon. So I got the book onto Amazon, which was good. And I think that again, it's all relationship building. I did get it into some art galleries. I've gotten it into just different retail spaces. And a lot of times you can call owners, especially if it's a smaller business, you can call an owner and say, hey, would you vend my book? And then, you want to negotiate a split. A lot of times, of course, they'll want to do a 60-40 split, which is not uncommon. But I think that honestly, a 50-50 split, if you can, but usually a 60-40 split is how the commissions go.
Okay, well, good to know. And I mean, this would have been, as you said, you talked about getting onto Amazon, but if you're saying 2009, I mean, things have changed so much
So much.
in the last
So much.
10 years in terms of self-publishing and everything. And so, I would say, do your research. If you want to self-publish a book, make sure you do your research for sure. So I know you talked earlier about the inner critic, and I think that is this is something I discovered as writing my own stuff, that like it almost feels like it never goes away, no matter how long you've been writing, no matter how much you get to your writing goals and you're kind of making them happen. Like that inner critical voice is always there. I'd love to know what helps you when you get stuck in your writing, whether it's that inner critic, whether it's some other form of fear that might get in your way. Like, is there an activity or a ritual, or like, what do you find helps you get through those blocks?
I think that just going back to what I've been called to do, just what I've been called to do, and knowing that there's a power greater than myself that wants to use me. God wants to use me as a vessel to communicate and synthesize the human experience. And sometimes I have to pull the inner critic forward. My inner critic is her name is Mommy Dearest. So Mommy Dearest and I sometimes got to have a very real conversation, and I have to let her be heard. Other times I think about who's on the other side of my fear. So who is it this is meant to touch, encourage, support on the other side of my fear. So whoever has an opinion about me, one or two things are at play. If they have an opinion about me and it's someone I know or in my community, then they've already had that opinion. So what difference does it make if I put the book out or put the poetry or whatever? Yeah, right. So they already have this opinion. And then if it's someone you don't know and they have an opinion, well, then there's nothing you can do to change it. So why withhold your joy and the thing that makes you happy, knowing that you're not going to please everyone, and then you're not doing it for them. The poetry always goes back to, this is for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that so much. So even though you've given so many nuggets so far, I would love to know if there's anything, it could be something you've said before or something that you just come to you, like what is something that you would tell a prospective poet, right? Because like I said, I have quite a few poet friends, and sometimes they just feel a bit lost because so many of the spaces out there are, they're for fiction or they're for, like spirit memoirs or whatever, and like sometimes they feel like they don't have a space. So I would love to hear what sort of encouragement or advice would you give a poet?
So I will definitely say create your own space. I think that I know, like my whole life, all I've done is create my space. If I see something that doesn't exist or it's not supporting me, then I just create my own space. So I started my own poetry series. I found a place to host it. And I remember the first time I did it, it was horrible. It was me, the band, and the bartender. And like, that was it. No one showed up to the space. And then I just, you know, stopped it and regrouped and thought about where else could I do it. And then I did it at a coffee shop, and we outgrew the coffee shop. So then what's next? So then I moved it to a library, and then I hosted that for, I think, 6 years, six consecutive years. Yes. Of hosting my own series. And so that did give me joy, because it provided a platform for other people to have their voices heard, to have their work showcased, and to be highlighted and heard and seen and felt. And I think that that's super, super important. So I would say that, you know, especially now, I think at the time I was doing a podcast weren't totally a thing, but it's like podcasts are a thing now.
Yes.
You can have your own poetry podcast, your own poetry YouTube channel, right? You can have your own poetry magazine if you want, blog. Like, there's so much that you can do now that doesn't require a lot of maintenance or like money. So you can just create your own platform. And one of the things that I love to do is I love writing poetry for causes.
Yes.
So
oh my goodness,
yes, I love writing poetry for causes. So I've performed poetry for cancer, breast cancer awareness. I've performed poetry for domestic violence. I've performed poetry for sexual assault. So there are things that matter to me. And I would say, as a poet, like, think about what matters to you and how can you align to amplify, you know, either a social justice cause or a movement that you feel particularly drawn to, and feel that it's important that it gets elevated.
I love that. That's just perfect. And as you can see, I'm all about creating your own platform. If you don't see it,
like, why wait? Like,
why wait? Right? The tech. I mean, it's a low bar to entry, in the sense that, like I said, you can have a blog, you can have a podcast. There's no gatekeepers. So I would definitely say go for it as well. I always say writers read, and so I'm curious, what do you love to read? I know you love your Audre Lorde.
I do.
What else do you love? You're the second person I've interviewed. I'm not sure what order the interviews are going into. You may be the first that the audience has heard, but yeah, you're the second Audre Lorde fan.
Man, Audre Lorde is everything in life. So Audre Lorde, Rumi, James Baldwin, Nikki Giovanni, Elizabeth Acevedo, Margaret Atwood.
Ooh, I like Margaret Atwood.
Yeah. Paul Laurence Dunbar, Claude McKay. Prince. We could keep going.
We could go on.
Tupac. Yeah, we could go on. Yeah, we could keep. Yeah, we could really. John Lennon. I mean, there's so many. You know, and then, you know, it's in like, what do we construe as poetry? Like, to me, a Nina Simone song is poetry. That
is so true. Yeah, that is very true. I love me some Nina Simone.
Yes.
The more you see, I was saying to a guest I interviewed a few days ago that, like, I think I'm going to create a book list. Now I'm like, I think I want to create a playlist for this. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I'll keep you posted, BerHenda. I might need some recommendations from you.
Absolutely.
So now we're kind of wrapping up. I would love you to tell me a little bit about, you know, what you do as a visionary empath coach. I have had the privilege of working with BerHenda, of being part of BerHenda's group. She is an incredible visionary empath coach. And so I just would love you to tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that your audience, they're probably empaths. Maybe some know it, don't know it, because empaths do tend to hang out in the artistic space. Why? Because empaths can feel the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of another person in a very local way, meaning they can feel it inside their bodies. And so this is different than maybe a highly sensitive person that is aroused by things like a beautiful landscape can give you goosebumps. A piece of music can create an emotional or elicit an emotional response. But the empath is that and more, meaning that if they hear a Beethoven song, they may have a sense of where Beethoven was in his mental or emotional state when he composed said song. And I believe that Beethoven was also an empath, because when he lost his ability to hear, he had a heightened sense of sight. So he would not just hear the music. It got more difficult for him to hear the music, but he could feel the vibration. So he would lay his ear, on the piano to find the chords, but he would also see color. So that's a form of synesthesia. So the empath, again, has heightened senses, or senses may even cross-pollinate or, cross each other, to where you can taste sound and smell, touch. Your senses are just really, really heightened. So I say all that to say, for the artist, you have a natural inclination or disposition of a heightened sense of awareness and feeling. And so it can manifest itself as a very transcendental or spiritual experience when you're engaged in your art. And to help synthesize, again, when we see things like the racial reckoning that happened here in the United States, you need an outlet to express that. And I think that art has always been that, especially during movements of unrest and injustice. The artists were the ones to give voice, to help amplify said movement, but also to manage their own grief, right? And the grief of the collective that happens through blood memory, a phenomenon that's something from a particular group of people that maybe have happened in the past, they can recall it in present day. So being empathic, I think in this day and age, is super important to rise. And for those of your listeners who really, in any way resonate with what I'm saying, do some investigation about if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person, either way, it is imperative that in this moment that we are the ones that are helping to champion a new earth and a new way of being that the world hasn't traditionally been accustomed to or built for.
Yeah, I love that. And where can they find out more about you, follow you, learn more of like what you talk about, what you teach, find out more about the power of girlhood, donate, all of the good things? I'd love to know.
All of the things. All of the things. Yay. Yes. Okay.
Tell me.
So BerHendaWilliams.com. I'm the only BerHenda in the world. So go to BerHendaWilliams.com. There's a hyphen in my name. Go there. And then if you can't remember anything else, the Power of Girlhood. The Power of Girlhood.org.
.org. Perfect. And there is going to be, as with all of the contributors, there's going to be a page that just says, where can you find BerHenda? And all of this information is going to be on there as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, don't go away, because we have so much more coming every week for the next few weeks or so. BerHenda, I love talking to you, always.
I love talking to you too.
Do it all day. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me, folks.
Absolutely.
I want you to check out BerHenda's page where you'll find her poetry. And if I manage to convince her in the next couple of minutes, she may actually be reading it. All right, bye.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. You can find out more about our guests in the notes below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss new episodes when they drop. And if this has inspired you to get your own writing project into the world, click on my website below and learn how you can work with me as a writing coach or an editor. Until next time, I send you big love from a small island.